My mother's voice haunted me long before I silenced it forever. "You'll never amount to anything," she'd say from the kitchen, while I dissected a victim's skull in the basement. Funny how right she was and how little that mattered. This isn't about blame, it's about cause and effect. How does a boy go from collecting roadkill to keeping human heads in his closet? The answer isn't in the blood, it's in the moments you wouldn't notice. Like how I practiced smiling in mirrors until it looked genuine. Tonight, let's talk about the seeds of violence. The basement smelled of damp concrete and old paint cans. She'd lock me down there for hours, sometimes days, not for punishment, for her convenience. Said I was too big, too awkward around her dates. The furnace rumbled in the corner like a sleeping animal. I learned its rhythms, how long between cycles, when the noise would cover my movements. That's where the knives started. Found a rusted box cutter behind some pipes. Used it on mice at first, then squirrels from the road. Their bones were surprisingly brittle. You'd think with all that running they'd be tougher. Mother called me ogre when she was feeling kind, other names when she wasn't. The thing about insults, they only hurt if you care. I stopped caring around the time I realized her wine glasses held exactly 12 ounces. Useful information when you're measuring how long until she passes out. The cat came later, black and white. Followed me home one evening. Mother hated animals, said they were filthy. I kept it in the basement for 3 days before she noticed the smell. She made me drown it in the sink. Didn't scream, didn't fight. Just watched me with those green eyes until the bubbles stopped. I remember thinking how quiet death was. How final. Psychologists would call this early warning signs. I call it practical education. Isolation teaches you to observe, to calculate. The basement had one light bulb, 40 watts. Took 17 minutes to burn your fingers if you held it. I tested that. Just like I tested how long before blood stops being slippery on concrete. Her boyfriends never looked down the basement stairs. Too busy laughing at her jokes about my spooky giant act. They'd ruffle my hair like I was some dumb dog, never noticed the way I counted their liquor bottles, never saw me practicing their signatures on scrap paper. People ignore what makes them uncomfortable. That's their first mistake. The toolbox came from school. Shop teacher left it unlocked. Took the chisels first, less noticeable than the saws. Wood carvings turned to anatomy studies real quick. Library books helped. Gray's Anatomy had better diagrams than the biology textbooks. Funny how they let a 14-year-old check out books about dissections. No one asked why. By 15, I could take apart a rabbit faster than the biology teacher. Clean, too. Bleach gets rid of most smells if you use enough. Vinegar works in a pinch. These aren't things normal kids think about. Then again, no one ever called me normal.
She thought the basement taught me obedience. It taught me patience. The way sound travels through floorboards. How long screams take to reach the neighbors. What facial expressions make adults nervous versus what makes them pity you. Valuable lessons, really. Someone. The last time she locked me down there, I didn't even mind. Spent 6 hours disassembling a raccoon carcass. Cleaned the bones with ammonia. Put them back together wrong on purpose. Left it on her pillow. When she screamed, I smiled. Not the fake one I practiced in mirrors. A real one. That's when I knew the basement had finished its work. They say neglected kids create imaginary friends. Mine just happened to be dead things. You learn a lot from stillness, from watching, from waiting. The basement didn't make me what I became. It just gave me time to practice. The walls down there were thin. I could hear everything happening upstairs. Dinner parties, arguments, the bed springs when her dates stayed over. Information is power. By the time I turned 16, I knew more about her than she knew about herself, including which sleeping pills dissolved completely in bourbon. Someone, the description was on the past on face. One thing they never tell you about isolation, it's addicting. The quiet, the control, the way people underestimate you because you're always in the background. They think they're putting you away. Really, you're putting them on display.
The rifle barrel felt warm from sitting in the sun when I picked it up. Grandma had it leaning against the porch railing, same as every morning since the rattlesnakes started showing up. She was kneading dough at the counter when I walked inside. Didn't even turn around, just told me to wipe my feet, like I hadn't been living there for 3 months already. Granddad was out back fixing the tractor. Always fixing something, that old bastard. Grandma's hands were covered in flour when she finally looked at me. That look, like I'd tracked mud on her clean floor, even though I'd wiped my shoes twice. Never raised her voice. Didn't have to. Disappointment weighs more than shouting. The dough made a wet slapping sound as she turned it over. I counted the knuckles standing out white on her hands. 7 visible. I wondered how many would show if I broke her fingers. The .22 caliber rounds were smaller than I expected, fit neatly in my palm like pennies. I loaded 5. 2 for them, 3 for just in case. Granddad's overalls were stained with motor oil when I found him bent over the engine. He grunted when I called his name. Never even straightened up all the way before the first shot went into his back. The second one missed, hit the tractor's gas tank. Made a funny ping sound. He made a funnier one when he hit the ground. Grandma dropped the rolling pin when she heard. Flour puffed up around her feet like smoke. She opened her mouth, not to scream, but to scold, like I was a kid who'd tracked dirt again. The shot caught her square in the ribs, went through the thin part. She sat down hard on the linoleum, coughing red into her apron. Second shot took off half her face. The flour wasn't white anymore. I sat at the kitchen table afterward, drank a glass of milk, watched the blood spread across the floor in crooked lines, like the cracks in the ceiling plaster. Called the sheriff's office myself. Their rotary phone took forever to dial. The deputy who answered sounded bored until I said the words, "Shot my grandparents." Then he got real interested real fast. Juvenile hall smelled like bleach and wet socks. The other kids were stupid. Stealing cars, smoking weed. Basic amateur shit. I read psychology textbooks from the rec room instead. Guards thought I was a model inmate. Didn't see me counting their patrol patterns. Didn't notice me cataloging which counselors responded to tears versus which ones preferred anger. The court psychiatrist had a mole above his left eyebrow that twitched when he got excited. He loved big words like paranoid schizophrenia and dissociative episodes. I memorized all of them, learned which pauses made me seem remorseful, figured out how wide to make my eyes when describing the voices. They ate it up like candy. One nurse actually cried when I talked about my childhood. Pathetic. Atascadero State Hospital was better than juvie. Real doctors, real case files. I volunteered in the records room twice a week. Read every patient chart they'd let me touch. Noticed how the successful parole cases all shared certain phrases. Demonstrates insight, shows remorse, engaged in treatment. Started using those exact words during my evaluations. The staff called it progress. I called it vocabulary building. Dr. Wellington had this tick where he'd adjust his glasses before asking about my mother. Took me 3 sessions to realize it meant uncomfortable questions were coming. By session 6, I could steer him away from dangerous topics just by mentioning baseball, his weak spot. Therapists are easy once you learn their tells, like poker players who show their cards and their eyebrows. The orderlies thought I was harmless. Let me help with group therapy sessions. I'd take notes while the other patients rambled. Learned which stories made the doctors nod approvingly versus which ones got meds increased. Filed it all away. Useful data. Release came quicker than expected. 21 years old with a clean bill of mental health. Not bad for someone who'd shot 2 people in cold blood 7 years prior. The discharge papers said rehabilitated. I knew the truth though. Nobody gets fixed. They just get better at hiding the cracks. The bus back to Santa Cruz smelled like diesel and old sandwiches. I pressed my forehead against the cool window and counted power lines all the way home. Mother would be waiting. Didn't know it yet, but so was I.
The IQ test booklet smelled like pencil shavings and stale coffee. 25 pages of pattern recognition, word association, spatial reasoning, child's play. Literally, half these questions belonged in elementary school. The psychologist tapped his stopwatch every 30 seconds. Didn't notice me counting his tells, the way he scratched his neck when bored, licked his lips before difficult questions. I scored 145. He called it exceptional. I called it a free pass. Abbas Atascadero's hallways stank of ammonia and boiled cabbage. Linoleum floors so polished you could see your distorted reflection in them. Perfect for practicing facial expressions. Mornings started with medication lineup. I swallowed the Thorazine tablets dry, palmed the lithium capsules, spit them out later in the shower drain. The orderlies never checked, too busy wrestling with the screamers in Ward C decide. The records room became my sanctuary. Metal shelves groaned under thousands of case files, schizophrenics, pyromaniacs, pedophiles, gold mines of human error. I organized them by diagnosis, then by success rates. Noticed patterns. Patients who mentioned childhood trauma got more therapy hours. Those who quoted the Bible got milder sedatives. The violent ones who learned to cry during group got parole sooner. Useful data. Dr. Langley ran psychotherapy sessions like a bad actor performing Shakespeare. Always the same dramatic pauses, the same leading questions. And how did that make you feel, Edmund? I gave him Oscar-worthy performances, memorized pages from Freud's case studies, regurgitated them with just enough pauses to sound genuine. His notes described me as highly insightful with genuine remorse. The file thickened. My parole chances improved. Thursdays were occupational therapy. Basket weaving for the simple cases. Woodshop for the moderately functional. I requested janitorial duty instead. Got me access to staff bathrooms, break rooms, the nurse's station. Learned which doctors drank coffee black, serious types. Who took 2 sugars, soft touches. Who added cream, easily manipulated. The head orderly kept Playboys in his locker. Left them unattended every Tuesday after lunch. I borrowed them strategically, made sure to get caught once or twice. Normal teenage behavior, right? Psychological evaluations were laughably transparent. They'd ask about violent fantasies, as if anyone would admit to those. I described bad dreams,
about my grandparents' deaths, complete with shaky hands and wet eyes. The clipboard brigade ate it up. Their pens scratched faster when I mentioned missing my mother. Every session ended with a pat on the back and increased yard privileges. Group therapy was an education. Schizophrenics rambling about alien transmissions, depressives moaning about imaginary sins. I took notes in the margins of my crossword book, learned which stories made the doctors lean forward. My father beat me with belts, which made them check their watches. The CIA put microchips in my teeth, adapted accordingly. By year 3, I was assisting in the psychology lab, administered Rorschach tests to new admits, transcribed interview tapes. Funny listening to other patients butcher basic manipulation attempts while I filed their failures alphabetically. The staff called me special assistant. Really, I was an apprentice studying flawed masters.
Release came without fanfare. A handshake from the superintendent, a bus ticket to Santa Cruz. My discharge papers read, "No longer a danger to self or others," in crisp typewriter font. The ink smelled faintly of alcohol wipes. The bus ride home took 4 hours. I counted the telephone poles slipping past the window, 387 in total. Memorized the rhythm guard towers made against the skyline. Noticed how civilians averted their eyes when the bus passed the hospital gates. Still afraid of the monsters inside, never realizing one just got out. Embarked mother's house looked smaller than I remembered. The same chipped blue paint on the porch steps. Same rusted mailbox, leaning slightly left. She opened the door with a cigarette dangling from her lips. Didn't hug me, just said, "You're fatter," and turned back to her soap opera. I set my bag down carefully, noticed she'd converted my old bedroom into a sewing room. The basement stairs groaned under my weight, just like before. The furnace still made that rattling sound on the 3rd cycle. Some things never change. Upstairs, Mother laughed at something on TV. The sound traveled through the floorboards perfectly. I unpacked my things slowly. 3 changes of clothes, a pocket knife purchased at the bus station, 2 psychology textbooks borrowed from the hospital library, and 12 pages of handwritten notes on staff rotation schedules, just in case I ever needed to visit again. The local police department was hiring clerical workers, minimum wage, full benefits. The application asked if I'd ever been convicted of a felony, didn't mention psychiatric hospitals. I checked no with a steady hand. The house smelled like cigarettes and lemon cleaner when I came back. Same ashy air, same yellowed curtains. Mother barely looked up from her soaps when I walked in, just said, "You're late," like Atascadero had been summer camp with a strict pickup time. She'd turned my bedroom into a sewing room, left my childhood things in boxes in the basement, school trophies, report cards, that sort of thing. I left them there. Sentimentalities for people with something worth remembering. Got a job at the DMV within 2 weeks. Easy work for someone who'd filed medical records all day. Liked watching people's faces when I denied their paperwork. That flash of panic when they realize some pencil pusher holds power over their lives. The checks came every Friday. Mother insisted I pay rent, wrote up a contract and everything. Could have argued, but I liked watching her lick her thumb counting the bills. Saved up for a motorcycle first. Black 1968 Triumph Bonneville. Neighbors complained about the noise. Mother said it made me look like a hoodlum. I started parking it behind the police station instead. A few months in, one of the cops asked if I wanted to join their poker game. Told them I didn't gamble, but I'd bring snacks. Became the donut guy real quick. 2 dozen every Thursday from Bill's Bakery. Chocolate eclairs for Sergeant Morrison. Jelly-filled for Deputy Collins. Took notes without writing anything down. Rented an apartment above a laundromat that fall. Tiny place, 1 room, bathroom down the hall. Paid cash so there wouldn't be records. Mother thought I was living with a girlfriend. Said I'd get some slut pregnant and ruin my life. The walls smelled like bleach and dryer sheets. Perfect for covering other odors. Started borrowing police reports under the pretense of helping file. Missing persons cases proved particularly educational. Mother.
UC Santa Cruz kids hitchhiked everywhere. You'd see them thumbing rides along Highway 1. Sandals, backpacks, that trusting glow only rich kids have. I had parked my police surplus Ford near the campus gates most evenings. No lights inside, windows cracked just enough to hear conversations drifting from coffee shops. Took pictures with a Minolta my 3rd week there. Developed them at the drugstore. No one blinked at a big guy buying film. The scanner came from a pawn shop on Pacific Avenue. Police band frequencies weren't encrypted back then. Could hear dispatchers sending units to domestic disputes, drunk tanks filling up, the occasional missing person report. Memorized the cadence of their voices. Learned which officers responded fastest to calls near the beach. The damn thing hissed static all night. I slept better with it on. Bars proved easier than I expected. Musso and Frank's had a back booth where cops drank off duty. Bought rounds, listened to war stories, laughed at just the right spots. They called me Big Ed, like it was affectionate. Never noticed how I mirrored their posture, their speech patterns. The stains on my Levi's never came out completely. Bleach only does so much. One rainy night, Deputy Walsh clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're all right, Kemper." Nearly laughed in his face.
Car needed modifications. Removed the interior door handles on the passenger side first. Added a second lock button near my left knee. Used a drill bit meant for metal, left no splinters. Practice reaching for it while driving. Smooth motions meant no hesitation later. The trunk latch got replaced with a remote release. Tested it with sandbags first. 50 pounds of dead weight makes a very specific thump when dropped into dirt. Mother kept asking when I'd find a real job. Said the DMV was beneath me, like killing grandparents hadn't been. Started parking near the boardwalk on Fridays. College girls loved the roller coaster screams, the saltwater taffy, the danger they could walk away from. Their hair smelled like coconut shampoo up close. Wrote down license plates in a little black book. Practice makes perfect, after all. The cops at Musso's started updating me on investigations. Missing co-ed cases piling up. Said it was probably some hippie cult. Brought them an extra box of donuts that week. Custard filled, their favorite. Walsh joked they should deputize me. I smiled wide enough to show teeth. The scanner crackled all the way home that night. Dispatch reported another girl last seen near the lagoon. I turned the volume up. The static almost sounded like screaming if you listened long enough.
The Ford's interior smelled like vinyl and gun oil when Marianne got in. She was hitching to her sister's place in Aptos. Said her boyfriend had dumped her at a party. The seatbelt clicked loud when she fastened it. I'd removed the interior door handle last week. Tested it with a sack of potatoes first. She didn't notice. People never check door mechanisms until it's too late. First lesson. Location matters. Picked a stretch of Highway 1 where the trees grew thick right up to the shoulder. No streetlights for 3 miles. The 22 was under my seat, but I wanted to try something quieter first. The tire iron was cold in my hand.
Waited until she was digging through her purse for cigarettes. The first swing caught her temple. Made a sound like a melon dropping on pavement. Second one was overkill, but I wanted to be sure. Blood spatter patterns are harder to clean from upholstery than you'd think. Anita was a mistake. Pretty blonde thing with giraffe legs, too chatty. Asked too many questions about why I kept glancing at the rearview mirror. The knife work was sloppy. Blade caught on her ribs. She made this wet, gasping noise that steamed up the windows. Had to pull over near Davenport to deal with it. The trunk had exactly 28 cubic feet of space if you remove the spare tire. She fit better curled up. Plastic sheeting helped with leakage. Disposal required planning. Learned that quick after nearly getting caught dumping Marianne near Scott Creek Beach. Ranger's flashlight beam swept the parking lot just as I was closing the trunk. Had to sit on the bumper, smoking a cigarette until he left. Now, I scout locations weeks in advance. The cliffs north of Ano Nuevo have erosion patterns that do half the work for you. Tides come in fast around midnight. Saltwater preserves fibers but eats flesh. Convenient. Tools became an obsession. Upgraded from kitchen knives to proper hunting gear. A buck knife holds its edge better after hitting bone. Rope should be nylon. Natural fibers leave traces. Keep everything in a tackle box labeled fishing supplies. Police never check a man's hobby equipment unless given reason. The apartment's closet had perfect dimensions for storage. 60 inches wide, 24 deep. Soundproofing was just egg cartons under the carpet. Landlord complained about the smell once. Told him I was taxidermying roadkill for an art project. He believed me.
Frequency matters. Too many disappearances in one area draws heat. Spread them out. Santa Cruz 1 month, San Jose the next. Never hit the same hitchhiking spot twice in a row. Changed license plates monthly using swaps from the DMV files. Always paid with cash at the parts store. The scanner buzzed constantly with missing persons reports. Cops blamed drugs, runaways, cults. Their biases made better alibis than I could invent. Marianne's purse yielded $17 and a library card. Anita had a class schedule folded in her jeans, burned both in the apartment's rusty sink, kept the ID cards though, started a collection in a hollowed-out copy of Moby Dick. Police reports mentioned personal effects missing from victims. Suggested sexual motive, they said. Let them think what they wanted. The hills behind UCSC became my filing system. Different canyons for different purposes. One gully for items that'd decompose quick, clothing, paper. Another for durable evidence, keys, jewelry. Never bury anything shallow. 6 feet is standard grave depth for a reason. Coyotes do cleanup duty if you're patient. Saw one trotting with a femur in its teeth last spring. Nature's perfect crime scene technicians. Witnesses are predictable. People see what they expect. A big guy driving a cop-style sedan must be law enforcement. I kept a fake badge in the glove box just in case. Never had to use it, but the weight was comforting. The real cops still bought me beers at Musso's, laughed when I joked about writing traffic tickets. News vans started showing up near campus by May. Some blonde reporter kept doing stand-ups about the co-ed killer. She pronounced it like it was one word, co-ed killer, like a brand name. Her hair was the same straw color as Anita's, might have followed up if she hadn't had a camera crew. Perfection comes through repetition. Each one taught me something new. How duct tape muffles better than rope, why you park facing exit routes. which motels never ask for ID if you pay extra. Logistics turned chaos into routine. The scanner crackled non-stop now, more disappearances than anyone could connect. I tuned it to the Weather Channel sometimes, just for variety. The apartment's walls were thin. Could hear the neighbor's TV through the plaster. Game shows mostly. Sometimes when I came back from disposal runs, I'd catch fragments of news reports. They never described me accurately. Always some loner or drifter. Meanwhile, I was drinking with detectives every Thursday, bringing donuts to the station. Helpful, harmless Big Ed. Funny how that works. Tools got cleaned in the laundromat sink after hours. Hot water kills most DNA, they say. The owners never checked the drains. Ironic, they were so careful about lint traps. Started scheduling laundry nights after full moons. Gave me cover for any unusual stains. 3 rule. No more than 3 stops between pickup and disposal. Gas stations have cameras. Rest areas have rangers. Stick to deserted pullouts where the map says scenic view. Means no houses nearby. The Ford's odometer clicked steadily higher. 3,000 miles added in 6 months. All undocumented, all untraceable. The radio played American Pie the night I picked up the dancer. Song was everywhere that summer. She hummed along off-key while unlacing her shoes. I adjusted the mirror to watch her legs. Something about the way tendons moved under skin, like anatomy in motion. The tire iron was cold again. Don McLean kept singing about the day the music died. Poetic, really. Her feet barely touched the dashboard when the first swing connected.
Aiko had ballet sloths dangling from her backpack when I picked her up outside the dance studio. Rainwater glistened on the sidewalk. She smelled like hairspray and those peppermint candies teachers keep in jars. 17 miles to her house, she said. I'd already scouted the route. 3 possible turnoffs where no one would hear a throat get cut. She noticed the license plate first. Why does it say municipal on the bottom? Smart kid. Most don't look. Had the fake badge ready, but didn't reach for it. Just shrugged and said it was my uncle's old police car. She bought it. They always do, if you don't oversell. The 8-track was playing Crosby, Stills and Nash too loud. Had to keep adjusting the volume so she wouldn't hear the trunk latch rattling. Turned onto Bean Creek Road instead of her requested route. She frowned but didn't protest. Too polite. I checked the mirror every 30 seconds. Exactly. No headlights behind us. The knife was under the passenger seat, but I wanted to try something new. Strangulation first. Could always switch methods if she fought back. Her tights made a rasping sound against the vinyl seat. I asked about her recital. She chattered about some Tchaikovsky piece while twisting a strand of hair around her finger. The road got bumpier. Trees closed in. She stopped talking when I slowed near the abandoned orchard. Found out later, she was 15. Younger than the others. Didn't matter. She still needed killing. Hands went around her throat before she could unbuckle. No scream, just this tiny gasp, like she'd stubbed a toe. Expected more fight from a dancer. Their muscles are usually strong from all that jumping. The trunk smelled of gasoline and old newspapers. Wrapped her in a painter's tarp I'd bought at Sears. Different brand than the others. Never create patterns. Left the ballet shoes, though. Too distinctive. Drove past her house on the way back to town. Lights were on. Mother was probably waiting up. Odd how that thought made my hands shake on the wheel. Not guilt. Just nerves. Stopped at a self-serve car wash near the DMV.
High-pressure hose gets rid of trace evidence better than wiping things down. The scanner crackled with static. No bulletins about missing dancers yet. Wondered if her mother had called it in, or was still hoping she'd walk through the door. Probably checking the clock every 5 minutes. The laundromat was empty when I dumped my clothes. 3/4 bought me 40 minutes on the heavy cycle. Watched the dark water swirl while eating a vending machine Snickers. Thought about Aiko's neck. How delicate the...
Musso's was packed with cops when I got there. Took my usual stool between Walsh and Collins. They were debating the missing girls case over Budweiser's. "Third one this month," Walsh said. Collins thought it was some Vietnam vet gone psycho. I suggested maybe a trucker passing through. They liked that theory, shifted blame elsewhere. Played dumb when they asked where I'd been. "Car trouble," I said. The lie smelled like peanut butter from the candy bar. The bartender poured my usual, Jack Neat, no ice. Left it untouched, just to see if anyone noticed. Nobody did. Police reports spread across the bar. Black and white photos of smiling girls clipped to manila folders. Recognized 2 of them. Their teeth looked whiter in the pictures than they had in real life. Walsh asked if I wanted to join the search party next weekend. Said sure, while tracing water rings on the countertop. 5 complete circles before he changed the subject. The scanner in my apartment would pick up their search grid coordinates later. Useful information for altering disposal routes. Drove past the dance studio at midnight. One light was still on. Shadow moved behind the blinds. Teacher maybe, or a cop taking statements. Didn't stop to look closer. The Ford suspension creaked going over railway tracks. Needed to grease that before the next one. Slept better than usual that night. Dreamt about music boxes. Woke up to rain ticking against the window air conditioner. Scanner mentioned a missing juvenile at 6:17 a.m. Description mentioned pink tights and a blue backpack. Threw the newspaper away, unread. Rain stopped by noon. Sun came out like nothing happened. Went to work at the DMV as usual. Processed 12 registration forms. Denied 2 for incomplete paperwork. One lady cried when I told her she'd have to come back. Barely noticed. Too busy thinking about arterial spray patterns on car ceilings. Bought another tarp on lunch break. Different store this time. Salesman asked what I was painting. "Just some touch-ups," I said. He nodded and took my cash. Funny how people accept the simplest explanations. Collins waved me over at the diner that night. Said they'd found a shoe near Wilder Ranch. Not Aiko's. Wrong color. I nodded along while stirring cream into coffee. The spoon made a faint ringing sound against the ceramic, like a tiny alarm no one heard.
The weather forecast predicted more rain. Good. Would wash away tire tracks at the orchard. Might even uncover some of the earlier ones if I got lucky. Nature's janitor always cleans up if you wait long enough. I laundered the car mats again before bed. The industrial dryers at Suds and Duds get hotter than home machines. 70 minutes on high should destroy any skin cells. Some guy was arguing with the change machine when I left. He didn't look up as I walked past carrying a bundle of cleaned rags. Almost disappointing how little attention people pay. Ball set the police scanner to low volume before sleeping. Static whispered through the tiny speaker. Caught the word dentals before drifting off. They'd need those records to confirm anything. By which time I'd be at work stamping forms, making small talk, being just another face in the crowd. Keep the routine normal. Never break pattern unless absolutely necessary. That's how you stay invisible. Ball Aiko's obituary ran 3 days later, page 6, below a tire ad. No photo, just 3 paragraphs about potential and tragedy
and a memorial fund. Kept the clipping in the Moby Dick book with the others. Turned on the scanner extra loud that night. Music died indeed.
The bathroom tile was cold under my knees. Cindy's shampoo bottle had tipped over. Almond-scented suds spread across the porcelain while the water ran pink. She'd been easier to convince than most. Just had to mention my mother needed help with her meds. A nursing student's weakness. The chance to play hero. The towel rack left bruises on my forearm where she grabbed it. Didn't expect that much fight from someone so small. The hammer made less noise than I'd planned. 3 solid hits to the temple before she stopped twitching. Almost disappointing. I'd brought extra trash bags expecting more of a mess. Her textbook was open to a chapter about circulatory systems. Irony's funnier when it's not trying so hard. The gun was last-minute insurance. Single shot to the forehead when the hammer blows didn't finish things fast enough. Ballistics could trace bullets, though. Had to dig it out with a steak knife afterward. The lead was more deformed than I expected. Left a perfect little crater in the bone. Disposal took 14 hours. Started with the bathtub, drained the water first, then used her own nail brush to scrub the grout lines. Bleach only does so much against hemoglobin. Had to replace the shower curtain too. The plastic had tiny spatters that wouldn't wipe clean. Funny how much forensic evidence collects around drains. Took the trap apart with channel locks. Found one of her eyelashes stuck in the gunk. The head was the tricky part. Too distinctive, too memorable. The backyard smelled like wet grass and motor oil while I worked. Mom's pruning shears went through the vertebrae easier than I'd guessed, like cutting chicken wings at that awful restaurant job back in Atascadero. Wrapped it in yesterday's newspaper. Front page had an article about the missing co-eds. Couldn't make that up if I tried. Trunk space was getting crowded. Had to move the spare tire to fit everything. The tarp made crinkling noises all the way to the dump site. Left the nursing books, though, too heavy to carry far, and textbooks don't decompose like flesh does. The ravine near Highway 9 was perfect. Steep enough that hikers avoided it, shallow enough that I didn't need ropes. Tossed the bundles at different intervals. Let gravity do the distribution work. Got home at 3:17 a.m. Made eggs like nothing happened. Mother complained they were runny. I didn't argue, just watched her chew while counting the veins on her temples. The phone rang while I was doing dishes. DMV supervisor asking why I was late. Said I had car trouble. They bought it. The scanner was unusually quiet that morning. No alerts about missing nursing students. Maybe her roommate thought she'd pulled an all-nighter at the library. College kids disappear for hours all the time. It's why campuses make such good hunting grounds. Made mental notes about her schedule, though. Should have asked what days she had clinical rotations before killing her. Work dragged. Processed 42 vehicle registrations. Denied 3 for incomplete paperwork. One guy threatened to report me. I smiled and gave him the complaint form. Watched his fingers shake filling it out. Funny how people think bureaucracy is the worst thing that could happen to them. Drove past the nursing school at lunch. 2 cop cars in the lot. Didn't stop. Just noted their positions relative to the parking attendant's booth. The student lounge had a missing poster up by afternoon. Bad Xerox job made Cindy's face look blurry. Almost didn't recognize her. Musso's was packed that night. Detectives Walsh and Collins were slurping oysters at the bar. They brought up the possibly missing nursing student between bites. I suggested maybe she'd eloped. They laughed so hard, Collins spat out his beer. Ordered a round for the house using the cash from Cindy's purse. $23 and some loose change. Left the coins, too distinctive when paying tabs. The laundromat's dryers were all in use when I got there. Had to wait 40 minutes with a bag of bloody clothes on my lap. Some frat kid kept side-eyeing the bundle. I stared back until he found somewhere else to fold his briefs. Found Cindy's student ID while sorting the laundry. Kept it with the others in the Moby Dick book. Page 217. the chapter about harpoon wounds. The scanner crackled with static all night, caught the word dental records around 2 a.m., turned it off after that. Next morning's paper had the story buried on page 7. 2 paragraphs. No photo. They quoted some professor calling Cindy conscientious. I clipped the article anyway, added it to the scrapbook beneath my mattress. 3 days later, they found a sneaker near Boulder Creek. Wrong gender, wrong size. The search teams were looking in all the wrong places. Not surprising. People always assume killers are stupider than they are.
Finished the week with perfect attendance at the DMV. Got praised for my efficient paperwork processing. The supervisor never noticed my boots had tiny flecks of something dark near the laces. Maybe blood, maybe motor oil. Could have been anything, really. Collins bought me a drink that Friday. Said I looked tired. I told him I'd been binge-watching police procedurals. He slapped my back hard enough to make my teeth rattle. That's not how real detective work happens, he said. I nodded and sipped my whiskey. Let him think he was educating me. The UCSC library had extended hours during finals week. Plenty of co-eds studying late. Plenty of shadows in the parking lots. I circled the campus twice before heading home. Made notes about security patrol patterns. The scanner stayed quiet the whole drive. Cindy's memorial service was on a Tuesday. Stayed for half an hour, far enough back that no one would remember me. Watched her mother collapse against the casket. Open casket. Should have asked what morticians use to cover gunshot wounds. Could have been useful information. Bought new license plates the next day, different county this time. The clerk didn't blink when I paid cash. Why would she? Big harmless Ed with his paperwork in order. Just another bureaucrat in a world full of them. The campus newspaper ran an editorial about safety procedures 2 weeks later. Suggested more lighting around the biology building. I cut it out and laughed until my ribs hurt. They never learn.
The parking lot lights flickered near the UCSC biology building, 2 bulbs out of 6 working. Administrative budget cuts were my best accomplice. Roseanne and Alice stood under the one functioning light comparing lecture notes. Their backpacks made identical thumps when they tossed them into my car. Too trusting. That's what 4 years of safe suburban upbringing gets you. Roseanne smelled like oranges and cigarette smoke. Alice had lavender shampoo. Their voices overlapped in the front seat, some debate about a chemistry midterm. Didn't matter now. The restraining hold worked better sideways across both throats than I'd anticipated. Their legs kicked in unison at first, then out of sync. Synchronization's overrated anyway. Trunk space calculations became critical. 2 bodies at 110 and 98 pounds respectively. Had to remove the spare tire entirely. Plastic sheeting crinkled louder with double the weight. The campus security car rolled past just as I slammed the trunk. Guard tipped his hat. Should have asked if he wanted to check inside. Geography lessons paid off. Drove west first toward Big Basin, then north on Route 9. Alternating directions confused pattern recognition. The scanner stayed quiet except for a drunk driver call near downtown. Alice's wristwatch ticked loud enough to hear over the engine. Stopped twice to adjust the load when something shifted. Dissection required improvisation. The ravine had decent lighting from the moon. Used Roseanne's own nail file on Alice first. Blunt instruments leave distinctive fractures. Best to vary the methodology. Their textbooks made useful trays for organ placement. Who says liberal arts majors aren't practical? Heads required special consideration. Roseanne's went into a culvert near Boulder Creek. Concrete swallows evidence nicely. Alice's stayed in the trunk until morning. Ended up mailing that one to the Sacramento coroner's office in a hat box. Postmark misdirection never hurts. The clerk at Mailboxes Unlimited complimented my penmanship. Cleanup took 3 showers. Their hair kept showing up in odd places, clung to the steering wheel, stuck in the trunk's weather stripping. Found one of Alice's eyelashes on my shirt collar Tuesday morning. Tweezers solved that problem. The car wash near the DMV got extra business that week. Police chatter focused on boyfriends initially. Standard procedure. Walsh mentioned the case over beers at Musso's. I suggested maybe they'd run off to join a commune. He snorted bourbon through his nose, laughing. Their missing posters used terrible photos. Roseanne's was from her high school yearbook. Souvenirs added up. Alice's class ring fit my pinky finger. Roseanne's student ID had better laminate than most. Kept them with the others, under the loose floorboard near my bed. The collection was getting respectable. Maybe start alphabetizing soon. Work provided perfect alibis. Processed 38 vehicle registrations the day after. One lady complained her form took 12 minutes instead of 10. Smiled and apologized while adjusting the fresh bandage on my right thumb. Knife slips happen. The campus newspaper ran an editorial about safety lighting. Proposed more emergency call boxes near parking areas. Administration vetoed it for being too expensive. Students protested for 3 days before forgetting about it. Meanwhile, the broken bulbs still hadn't been replaced. Collins brought donuts to the DMV that Friday. Said I looked tired. Told him I'd been pulling overtime on tax paperwork. He nodded like that explained everything. The jelly filling left a red stain on his tie. Almost certainly not blood, but close enough to be amusing. Drove past the biology building that night. New graffiti on the wall where Alice usually sat between classes. Someone had spray painted, "Remember Roseanne and Alice," in shaky letters. The "and" was lopsided. Artistic standards were declining. Library records showed Alice had checked out Gray's Anatomy 3 times, probably studying for some pre-med requirement. Left it on the shelf near the circulation desk, let them wonder why it came back without her. Reese Roseanne's mother held a vigil near the student union. Lasted precisely 93 minutes according to my stopwatch. Counted 17 attendees at peak. Most left when the free coffee ran out. The laundromat's heavy-duty washer cost 75 cents instead of 50. Worth every penny for eliminating fibrous evidence. Watched Roseanne's jeans tumble behind the glass while eating vending machine peanuts. Salt sticks to your fingers worse than blood does.
Scanner chatter peaked around Valentine's Day. 3 more missing girls reported countywide. None mine. Walsh joked about making a serial killer bingo card. I chuckled and bought the next round. UCSC installed 3 new security cameras that March, all facing the administration building. Priorities, right? The parking lots stayed dark except for that one flickering light near the biology annex. Convenient. Final irony: Alice's organic chemistry midterm got canceled due to extenuating circumstances. Professor handed out A's to the whole class. Roseanne would have been pissed. She actually studied. Musso's started a memorial fundraiser. $5 margaritas with proceeds going to campus safety initiatives. Drank 2 while listening to detectives brainstorm theories. Their best guess involved a revenge-motivated janitor. Humans will believe anything that confirms their biases. Printed missing posters still fluttered on telephone poles come spring. Weather had faded Roseanne's face to a pinkish blur. Alice's grin stayed intact longer. Better quality paper, maybe. Wind eventually took both down around graduation season. The biology department planted a memorial tree. Some sapling that'll take 20 years to mature. By then, even their roommates will struggle to recall their middle names. Memory's funny that way.
Found Roseanne's sociology notebook in the trunk 6 months later. Margin doodles of flowers and peace signs. Used it to start a campfire up near Big Sur. The pages burned slower than flesh does.
The coffee percolator gurgled at 6:03 a.m. Mother always made it too weak. Like dishwater, I told her once. She slapped me for that comment. Still remembered the sting. This morning, she was wearing that pink bathrobe, with coffee stains down the front. Same as every Sunday. The hammer was cold in my hand. Stanley 16 ounce with the ergonomic grip. Bought it yesterday at Sears. Salesman said it was perfect for household repairs. She was midway through criticizing my posture when the first swing connected. Made a crunching sound, like stepping on eggshells. Second blow caught her temple. No dramatic collapse, just a slow slide down the refrigerator door. Her head left a red smear on the avocado green paint. Fitting color, really. That fridge had outlived 2 husbands and a world war. The knife work was almost perfunctory. 14 stab wounds. Lost count around number 9. Her throat made a wet, clicking noise when I dragged her to the disposal unit. The damn machine jammed halfway through. Should have oiled the mechanism last week. Had to use Dad's old pipe wrench to clear the blockage. Blood seeped into the linoleum cracks. Would need new flooring eventually. Her friend Sally arrived at noon sharp. Always did on Sundays. Set out the good china like nothing was wrong. Made small talk about church sermons and neighborhood gossip. Sally never noticed the damp spot near the fridge. Or maybe she did. People ignore uncomfortable truths when politeness demands it. The roast beef was overcooked. Typical. 5 hours spent cleaning. Bleach removed most stains, but left the kitchen smelling like a swimming pool. Found one of her molars under the table. Pocketed it as a keepsake. The disposal unit still wouldn't run properly. Probably bone fragments in the gears. Ended up taking it apart with tools from the garage. Dad's old toolbox finally proved useful after 15 years of gathering dust. Called the police station that evening. Walsh answered. Said I'd be out of town a while. He joked about me finally taking a vacation. The receiver was sticky in my hand. Must have missed a spot cleaning. Drove to Sally's place around midnight. Her porch light was busted. Convenient. Head removal took 27 minutes, start to finish. The bone saw from my trunk worked better than kitchen knives. Left her body in bed with the blankets tucked tight. Looked almost peaceful, if you ignored the neck stump. Kept both heads in ice coolers for transport. Highway Patrol didn't check recreational vehicles that thoroughly back then.
Called the Santa Cruz PD from a payphone outside Denver. Asked for Walsh specifically. Told him everything in alphabetical order. Allison, Anita, Cindy, Marianne, Roseanne, Sally. He thought it was a prank at first. Had to describe the wallpaper in Mother's kitchen to convince him. Even then, he kept saying, "Jesus Christ, Ed," between questions. The arrest was anticlimactic. 2 state troopers pulled me over near Colorado Springs. Didn't resist, didn't explain. Just handed over the written confession from my glove compartment. One cop vomited when he read it. The other couldn't meet my eyes. Paperwork took longer than expected. Colorado wasn't used to serial killer tourism. Flew back to California in cuffs, window seat, clouds looked like smoke from up there. Thought about aerial views of my disposal sites. How small everything appears from a distance. The FBI agent escorting me asked why I stopped. Told him I'd run out of storage space. He didn't laugh. Detectives Walsh and Collins were waiting at SFO. Both looked like they hadn't slept. Interrogation room chairs are designed for discomfort. Plastic seats slope forward just enough to strain your back. Played along for 7 hours before they brought in recordings. My voice sounded different on tape, calmer than I remembered. Described dissections like someone explaining a carburetor rebuild. The stenographer left twice to vomit. Evidence logs listed 17 personal items recovered from my apartment. Mostly jewelry, some hair samples. One biology textbook with intriguing margin notes. Left the Moby Dick collection behind intentionally. Figured they'd appreciate the irony. Mother's obituary called her a devoted parent. Ran next to coupons for a mattress sale. The funeral was closed casket, for obvious reasons. 12 attendees. Half were cops taking notes. Prison psych evaluations started immediately. Same questions as a Tascadero 15 years prior. Different answers this time. Told them everything except the useful parts. Let them think they were getting breakthroughs. Played the remorse card when needed. The cell smelled like industrial cleaner and stale sweat. Concrete walls absorbed sound better than the basement ever did. Guards initially watched me extra close, eased up after I fixed the warden's typewriter. Always pays to be helpful. First interview request came from the Chronicle. Reporter asked what I regretted most. Said I should have bought a heavier duty disposal unit. He didn't print that part.
Dreamt about the basement again last night.
Same cracks in the ceiling plaster, same hum from the furnace. Woke up expecting to see roadkill bones on the shelf. Instead, it was just prison bars and the sound of someone sobbing 3 cells down. The appeals process could take years. Doesn't matter. Already gave my best confession. Rest is paperwork. Mail arrives at 9:15 every morning. Mostly fan letters lately. Odd how many people want relationship advice from a matricide. Library privileges include 1 nonfiction book per week. Currently reading forensic pathology textbooks. The illustrations are disappointingly inaccurate. Should send the publisher some corrective notes. Visiting hours are Saturdays. Sometimes Walsh shows up just to stare. Never asks questions. Just watches me eat cafeteria sandwiches like it's some profound revelation. Last week he asked if I'd do it again, given the chance. Didn't answer. Let him think about it over the drive home. Tomorrow's another session with the prison psychiatrist. Young guy, fresh degree, still thinks he can reach me. Brings little notebooks with prepared questions. Leaves with ink smears on his palms from writing so fast. Sunlight hits my cell at 7:12 a.m. this time of year. Lasts exactly 14 minutes before the tower shadow cuts it off. Counted 9 dust motes dancing in yesterday's beam. Today I'll go for 10. Small goals keep you sharp. The commissary sells chocolate bars on Fridays. Same brand Cindy had in her purse. Bought 3 last week. Let them melt in the sun before eating. Tastes better warm.
Someone down the hall is screaming about appeals again. Sounds like the guy who stabbed his probation officer. Amateur. Final hearing is scheduled for June. Just a formality, really. Life means life in California. Only question is which prison they'll stick me in permanently. Heard Pelican Bay has better library access. Mother's grave faces due west, like I planned. No headstone yet. Too expensive, apparently. Sometimes I imagine her decomposing in perfect banker's hours. 9 to 5, weekends off, clouds rolling in punctually at dusk.
The prison barber comes Mondays. Always asks if I want the same crew cut. Always say yes. Funny how routines persist even behind walls. The scissors make the same snipping sound as the shears I used in the backyard that night. New guards arrive next month. More training seminars about dangerous offenders. Saw the manual on a warden's desk last week. My photo's on page 6 with 3 warning stickers. Flattering, really. They're interviewing me for some criminology study tomorrow. PhD candidate from Stanford. Wants to know about modus operandi development. Might tell her the truth. People are easier to kill when you bring donuts to their colleagues first. Rain's coming later. Can smell it through the barred windows. Same metallic tang as the car wash near the DMV. Same ozone crackle as the night I picked up Ico. Patterns repeating endlessly with minor variations. The dinner bell rings in 12 minutes. Meatloaf tonight according to the trustees. Same gray lump as every Tuesday. Might eat it this time. Might not. Choices matter less when you've already made all the important ones. Lights out at 10. Same as at Tuscadero. Same as the basement. Some loops close perfectly. Others just keep spiraling outward forever.
I drove east, with the radio playing. No particular destination in mind, just forward motion. The Impala smelled like bleach and leather. I'd considered Wyoming, maybe Montana. Wide open spaces where a man could disappear. But that wasn't the point anymore. Dunbatona in Chattobamaquin. Pulled into Pueblo, Colorado around midnight. Found a payphone outside a gas station. The kind with a metal cord and those little push buttons that clicked loud enough to hear. Dialed the Santa Cruz PD direct line. Memorized it from all those chats at the bar. The dispatcher sounded tired when she answered. Told her exactly who I was and what I'd done. She thought it was a prank at first. Then she put me through to Detective Alufi, to Diaz by 2 talks. He sounded amused. Ed, you drunk again? I walked him through the last 12 hours. The details only the killer would know. The precise angle of the knife wounds on Clarnell's neck. The way I'd arranged her vocal cords on the dresser like some macabre trophy. Static crackled on the line as he stopped breathing for 3 full seconds. Stay right there, he finally said, like I might hang up and vanish forever. But I'd already bought a sandwich from the gas station. Ate it while I waited, tame as taloned. When the Colorado Stadies showed up, they didn't cuff me right away. Just asked if I'd come quietly. I nodded toward the back seat, had all the murder weapons laid out like a museum exhibit. The hacksaw still had blonde strands tangled in its teeth. One cop looked like he might puke. The other kept adjusting his holster like I might make a move. Thing is, I could have kept driving. Had another tank of gas and a pocket full of cash. But what's the point of a masterpiece if no one sees it? They flew me back to California in cuffs, some rookie gripping my elbow the whole time like I'd sprout wings. Reporters swarmed the tarmac. Guess they'd monitored the police bands. Flashbulbs popped in my face. One guy shouted, "Why'd you turn yourself in?" Never answered that one. Let them wonder. To Diaz by 3 again. Booking took 4 hours. Standard procedure, they said. Took my belt, my watch.
The intake officer's hands shook, filling out the forms. Asked if I wanted a lawyer. Told him I could probably defend myself better than any public defender. Got my first mugshot then. Black ink on the height chart showing 6 feet 9 inches. The flash washed everything out. Made me look almost innocent.
They put me in an interrogation room with that cheap one-way glass. Didn't bother with good cop, bad cop. Just 2 detectives and a tape recorder. Offered me coffee in a styrofoam cup. Let it go cold while I walked them through each kill, start to finish. Gave them street names, weather conditions, what the victims were wearing. The younger detective kept rubbing his temple like he had a migraine. The older one, Detective Talcott, we'd played poker a few times, just stared at me with this weird mix of disgust and admiration. At one point, Talcott leaned forward. "You know we'll ask about the heads, right?" Smiled at him, told him preservation techniques, how to slow decomposition with basic household chemicals. His pen froze mid-scribble. The tape recorder captured every word, the steady hum of institutional fluorescence, the squeak of metal chairs. When they finally moved me to county, the guards gave me wide berth. Could hear whispers down the block. "That's the co-ed killer." Thing is, none of them really looked scared. Just curious. Same way you'd stare at a zoo exhibit. Had my first press interview 3 days later. Reporter asked about remorse. Laughed so hard my stitches hurt. Funny thing about confessions, they're not about guilt, they're about ownership. I didn't stop killing because I felt bad. I stopped because the work was done. The project had reached its natural conclusion, and every artist signs their masterpiece. They transferred me to Vacaville a month later. White walls, fluorescent lights, the same damn meatloaf every Tuesday. First thing I did, ask for the prison library catalog. Old habits die hard.
The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and ammonia.
They brought me a cup, black, no sugar. I thanked them. Politeness opens more doors than handcuffs. The tape recorder clicked on with that satisfying snap of official business beginning. After years of documenting my own work, it felt almost nostalgic to have someone else taking notes for once. Detective Alufi kept rubbing his thumb along his notepad edge. The younger one, Peoples, his badge said, had this habit of leaning forward when I described technical details. Not like they were hearing confessions, like they were attending a lecture. I walked them through each step with the patience of a shop teacher explaining carburetor maintenance. The angled cuts, the weight distribution during transport, how skulls pop when separating from vertebrae. You could see the exact moment their professional detachment cracked. Not when I mentioned the body count. When I explained why I kept the heads for a while. Storage was an issue, freezer space being what it is, but preservation matters when conducting proper research. Peoples excused himself at that point, didn't even make it to the bathroom before vomiting in the hallway. The sound echoed. Alufi stayed. That's the thing about seasoned detectives. Either they've heard worse, or they're better at hiding revulsion. He kept asking about motives, as if human behavior follows some tidy flowchart. I gave him what he wanted: mommy issues, childhood trauma, the standard psychoanalytic buffet. Watching him scribble notes felt like feeding breadcrumbs to a pigeon. Meanwhile, the tape kept spinning, capturing every clinical detail about cervical vertebrae separation techniques. The transcripts don't show how people's hands shook when handing me more coffee. Doesn't record Alufi's foot tapping faster when I mentioned disposing of Marianne Pesch's remains near Highway 1. But it's all there between the lines. Their fascination wrapped in horror. horror wrapped in professional curiosity. By the third hour, they weren't interrogating, they were collecting. And I was donating specimens to the Museum of Abnormal Psychology. Here's what never made the official record. When the DA later listened to those tapes, he needed 3 attempts before getting through the full confession without taking breaks. The secretary who typed up the transcripts quit after 2 days. Yet during questioning, laughs were shared, coffee refills offered. At one point, Alufi muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. Not in disgust, but with something almost like admiration. That's the dirty secret about monsters who speak in complete sentences. We don't just kill. We make accomplices out of everyone who leans closer to hear the details.
Toward the end, they asked about remorse. An amateur question. True professionals know remorse implies regret, and regret requires wanting things to be different. I suggested they ask whether surgeons feel remorse for incisions. Peoples looked ill again. Alufi wrote something down without looking at his pad. The tape recorder captured 13 seconds of silence before someone remembered to turn it off. Cossey, they never did finish that pot of coffee. Left about 2 inches of sludge at the bottom. The grounds had oversteeped by then. Bitter. Like those last few questions about childhood trauma they kept circling back to, as if digging through my past could somehow excuse their present discomfort. The truth was simpler. Some specimens belong in jars. Just don't expect them to apologize for being preserved. Later, after sentencing, I heard that Alufi kept a copy of my psych eval in his desk. Not case files, just that one assessment. Probably still takes it out sometimes when rookies ask how to spot a killer. He'll tell them to look for the monsters. Then he'll remember that for 6 hours in April 1973, his hand never once moved toward his sidearm, despite sitting 3 feet from one. The tape recordings prove it.
The courtroom smelled like lemon polish and aftershave. The bailiff had to bring in a special chair for me. Regular ones weren't built for 6'9". My lawyer pushed the insanity plea hard, said no sane person could do what I'd done. Problem was, I'd spent years studying sane people. Knew exactly how they talked, blinked, fidgeted. Mirrored it all perfectly. The jury shifted in their seats when the prosecution played my confession tape. One woman clutched her purse like I might lunge for it. Dr. Fort was different. Forensic psychiatrist from Stanford. Asked questions that actually required thinking. "Do you believe the heads retained consciousness?" he asked during evaluation. I told him truthfully, no, but I did talk to them sometimes. Not because I thought they could hear, because vocalizing observations helps cement learning. He nodded, like I'd said something profound, instead of obvious. On the stand, I described my spirit wives. Not ghosts, that would be crazy. More like taxonomic classifications. Anthropology specimens needing proper documentation. The jurors looked confused. The prosecutor called it delusional. Dr. Fort scribbled notes. I could practically see him itching to publish a paper. The plea hinged on whether I understood right from wrong. Trick question. Understanding isn't the same as caring. Explained it like this. A chemist knows arsenic is poisonous. That doesn't stop him studying its properties. The judge rubbed his temples. Closing arguments were theater. My lawyer waved psychiatry journals. The DA held up crime scene photos. I counted ceiling tiles, 84 with a crack running through the seventh row. When they read the verdict, sane, guilty, the courtroom erupted. I barely heard it, too busy noticing how the court reporter's pencil left gray smudges on her collar. Sentencing was a formality. Life for the students, life for the hitchhikers. Separate count for mother. Judge called that one especially heinous. I almost laughed. Compared to the others, hers was practically clinical. No mess, no struggle. Just the satisfying crunch of a problem finally solved. Dr. Fort visited afterward. Brought files instead of handcuffs. Wanted to discuss homicidal taxonomy. Turned out he'd been tracking similar cases nationwide. Asked if I'd help categorize them. Said it might.
The transfer to Vacaville happened mid-November. Guards kept staring like I might sprout horns. I asked one for a crossword book. He looked relieved at the normal request. 3 days later, the warden approved my library card. First book checked out? Gray's Anatomy, 1974 revised edition. The librarian didn't blink. Media kept analyzing the insanity plea, missed the point entirely. It was never about avoiding punishment, just confirming the diagnosis. Nothing broken, no demons, no snapped psyche, just perfect, rational calculations leading to inevitable outcomes. The only insanity would have been stopping sooner. Parole hearings started 7 years in. Ritual more than procedure. Same questions every time. Do you feel remorse? Would you kill again? Always answered honestly. That's what baffled them most. Not the crimes, but the clarity. Most violent offenders sob about childhood trauma. I discussed victim selection criteria like menu options. Dr. Fort's papers got published. Citations included subject EK in the footnotes. Sometimes researchers visited, grad students mostly, nodding eagerly when I explained how skull thickness varies by ethnicity, taking frantic notes when I listed disposal site selection factors. Their pens scratched faster when I mentioned mother. The prison therapist tried a new approach last month, art therapy. Gave me charcoal and paper, drew anatomical diagrams instead of feelings. She called it avoidance. I called it proper labeling. Next session, she switched to Rorschach blots, pointed to one shaped like a pelvis. What do you see? I told her it resembled Marianne Pesce's iliac crest. She canceled the program after that. Latest psych eval mentions complete lack of affective empathy, like it's some revelation. The guards figured it out quicker, never saw me lose temper or beg for favors. Just calm, consistent logic applied equally to chess games and meal schedules. Taxpayers got their money's worth with me. Model prisoner. Always punctual for head counts. Last week, a new orderly asked why I read so many medical texts. Said I was considering becoming a doctor. He laughed. Didn't realize I was serious. The library just got a fresh donation. 2018 edition of Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine.
That's 2,700 pages of new data on human fragility. Visiting hours are Tuesdays, mostly researchers nowadays, occasionally a true crime writer. They all ask the same doomed questions about motive.
Solitary cell smelled like sweat and industrial cleaner. 15 days with nothing but a cot and a stainless steel toilet. They thought isolation would break me. Joke's on them, I've been training for this since the basement. At least there, they let me have books. General population was better. Not for company, for observation. Guards called me Big Ed like it was cute. Inmates gave me space without being told. Funny how that works. No fights, no trouble, just quiet understanding of the unspoken hierarchy. The library cart came Tuesdays. I fixed the warden's typewriter once. After that, they let me reorganize the nonfiction section. Small privileges add up. Interview requests started trickling in after the sentencing. Then the floodgates opened. Stanford researchers, FBI profilers, even a Japanese documentary crew. They'd lean forward when asking about motive. Sit back quickly when I explained cervical vertebrae separation techniques. Their pens would freeze mid-stride when I got to the storage methods. Always the same questions. Did you feel angry? Never the right ones. Did the left subclavian vein collapse before or after the third incision? The FBI boys were fun. Fresh-faced profilers clutching notebooks. Asked about disposal sites like it was a geography quiz. I gave them extra details. Soil composition near Highway 9. Tide patterns near Ano Nuevo. Their eyebrows twitched when I mentioned freezing heads for later study. One actually whispered, "Holy shit," to his partner. They published a paper later, cited me as Subject EK in the footnotes. Prison therapists tried the usual routes. Art therapy. I sketched proper cross-sections instead of feelings. Music therapy. Asked if I'd heard the victim's pulse rhythms during dissection. Got myself banned from both programs by answering too accurately. The court-appointed psychiatrist lasted 6 months before requesting transfer. Said I was therapy-resistant. Like that's some fatal flaw. Media visits were theatrical. Local reporters would tilt their recorders toward me like I might hiss spell. True crime authors leaned close for the gruesome bits. None ever asked about the logistics. How to balance a torso in a trunk while driving. Which solvents best eliminate fatty tissue from tools. That's what separates professionals from amateurs. The attention to operational details. Guards brought me extra paper for the library logs. In return, I drafted maintenance schedules for the facility's plumbing. Saved them 3 service calls in a month. They'd shake their heads at my repair skills. Big Ed could fix damn near anything, one said. No kidding. Prison pipes have better flow than most arteries.
Last year, a rookie guard asked why I participated in interviews. Said it helped law enforcement. He blinked hard at that. What I meant was, patterns emerge when you review enough data, like how certain detectives' shoes squeak before nervous questions, or how journalists smell distinctly of printer toner and adrenaline. Categorizing observers became its own experiment. Visiting hours now stack up like courtroom dockets. Mostly criminology students, sometimes homicide detectives. They scribble notes when I explain how sunlight accelerates decomposition faster than rainfall. One actually gagged when I mentioned the dental patterns on Aiko's molars. His pencil snapped on the next question. The prison library got an anatomy donation last month. 2022 editions, color plates, even a proper index. I cross-referenced it against the older manuals. Turns out, liver tissue stains haven't changed detection methods, just the textbooks got thicker.
New orderly arrived yesterday, asked why I help researchers after everything you did. Told him science isn't about penance, it's about proper labeling. He backed away slower than the others, might last longer than most. His shoes were polished enough to avoid tells. Mail comes weekly now, mostly fan letters, some marriage proposals. One lady sends poetry about my eyes. Doesn't know they photographed my right iris 3 times during bookings. Data collects whether they want it or not. The shower stalls here echo like the Santa Cruz garage, where I clean tools. Same wet concrete smell, same drain grime patterns. Guards joke that I'm the calmest lifer they've got. Truth is, every environment has its rhythms. Prison just happens to have more observers. Last week's psych eval mentioned continued lack of conventional affect, like that's some personal failure. The chaplain still asks about remorse every Sunday, never asks which arteries feed the heart fastest. That's the real question. Tomorrow brings another researcher, probably more FBI kids with clipboards. They'll whisper in the halls first, then the door will click, and the tape recorder will hum its same little greeting. Tools need proper handling, specimens require cataloging, and the work, the real work, never stops.
Camera lights feel warm against my skin. Not quite like blood drying, but close enough to notice. Reporters shuffle their notebooks, always starting with the same tired questions. Do you feel remorse? Why did you kill? Like they're reading from some true crime script. 5 minutes in, their pens slow down when my answers veer into forensic details instead of tearful confessions. They want a boogeyman, some snarling beast to justify their fear. Instead, they get a walking anatomy lesson. Watch their expressions shift when I explain how post-mortem lividity helps determine time of death. The blonde one from CNN actually dropped her coffee when I mentioned tendon separation techniques. Their producers probably hoped for sound bites about childhood trauma. I give them textbook quotes about arterial spray patterns. In neutral. Netflix got it wrong with Mindhunter. The actor playing me was too twitchy, too visibly unstable. The real trick is stillness, composure. That FBI profiler who visited last year, his hands shook more than mine ever have. He kept adjusting his tie while asking about victim selection, as if wardrobe choices matter when discussing organ removal. The documentaries love flashy recreations. Always show me lurking in shadows, eyes glowing like some horror movie ghoul. Reality was far more mundane. Most kills happened in broad daylight, parking lots, bus stops, places normal people never think to fear. That's the joke they never get. True monsters don't hide in alleys. We bring donuts to policemen lunchrooms. Interviews follow predictable arcs. First comes the wide-eyed fascination, their pupils dilating when I mention head preservation. Then discomfort creeps in as details pile up. By the 30-minute mark, they're checking their watches, suddenly remembering other appointments. Only the serious ones stick around for the important questions, like why I kept detailed logs of refrigerator temperatures, or how weather affects decomposition rates in coastal climates. Prison staff don't confiscate my mail anymore. Too many letters from medical students asking advice. One kid from Johns Hopkins wanted dissertation feedback on neuroanatomical mapping. His footnote citations included my trial transcripts. The warden stopped reading my correspondence after that psychiatry journal offered me a consulting gig. Sometimes they send young reporters as bait, fresh faces who think they'll reach me. Last one smelled like vanilla lotion and nervous sweat, asked what I dreamed about. I told her mostly spreadsheet layouts for victim databases,
Her recorder battery died before the follow-up question.
The cameras always focus on my size, hulking, towering, like physicality explains anything. None mention how quietly I can move when needed. The nurse's station never hears me approach during nightly rounds. Their surprise is almost insulting. You'd think professionals would notice a 6'9" man standing 3 feet away. True crime podcasts butcher the timeline constantly, mix up which victim came when, attribute quotes I never said. The dramatizations are worse, all dramatic music and gasping revelations. Reality lacked soundtrack cues, just the wet sound of a knife through fascia, the click of a trunk latch closing. A German film crew brought homemade strudel last month, thought food might loosen me up. They got excited when I praised the flaky crust, more excited when I compared it to desiccated skin texture. Their translator missed the joke. The media frenzy peaked after that NYT profile called me America's most articulate monster. Suddenly every sociology department wanted quotes. One professor cried when I explained how quietly a trachea collapses, not from horror, from academic excitement. His tenure committee probably loved that footnote. Websites run weekly polls. Would you have coffee with Edmund Kemper? Results skew surprisingly high. Turns out people like articulate psychopaths more than stuttering ones. The fan mail proves it, pages upon pages of marriage proposals and psychology questions. One woman sends haikus about my eyes. BuzzFeed once tried a quiz, which serial killer would be your best friend? I ranked third, behind Bundy, such as charisma points, and Gacy, such as clown gimmick. They deducted marks for my coldness, like warmth matters when discussing ideal homicide techniques. Every parole hearing sparks fresh headlines. Co-ed killer seeks freedom with my 40-year-old mugshot. Never mention how I testify against release myself. The board looks relieved when I explain recidivism statistics. Reporters ignore that part. Ruins the redemption arc. The latest documentary director smoked constantly during our interviews. Nervous habit. Asked what I'd do if released tomorrow. Told him I'd start a forensic consulting firm. His cigarette ash dropped on the release forms. Cameras still love shooting my hands, those huge, supposedly monstrous things. None notice how precisely they assemble model ships now, or how cleanly they repair the prison library's antique clock. Destruction gets ratings, maintenance doesn't.
Last month, a YouTuber asked my thoughts on amateur crime scene investigators. Suggested they wear gloves when handling evidence. His comments section exploded with conspiracy theories. The videos got 500,000 views. Neighboring today's interviewer brought a list of psychiatric terms, wants me to analyze myself. I give him decomposition rates instead. His producer keeps making throat-cutting gestures off camera. Too bad. The truth makes better television anyway. They'll edit this however they want later. Add spooky music where I mention dissection. Zoom in when I smile. The facts won't change though. Monsters don't resemble their press clippings. And the only thing I truly regret? Getting caught before finishing my research. The camera light burns steady. The reporter checks her mic pack. Somewhere out there, another true crime fan leans closer to their screen, waiting, watching, learning all the wrong lessons.
The chair in the therapy office squeaks every time the new shrink shifts his weight. Third one this year. They all start the same. Clipboard in lap, pen poised, that hopeful look like they're about to crack the case. His first question is the classic. Do you feel remorse for what you did? I could recite the script by now. Give him the answer he wants, some boilerplate about regret. Instead, I ask if he knows the melting point of human fat. His pen hovers. The chair squeaks again. They cycle through psychologists like guards rotate shifts. Young ones, fresh out of school, are easiest. Nervous laughter when I mention freezer logistics. The veterans pretend to care longer. Nod along as I describe clavicle fractures. None last more than 6 sessions. Except Dr. Langley. He made it 8 weeks before requesting transfer. Didn't like how I corrected his dissection terminology. Therapists always lean forward at the same points. Childhood trauma questions make their pupils dilate. Mention mother and their pens move faster. Basic behavioral conditioning. They're practically begging for certain responses, so I play along. Describe the basement punishments in vivid detail. Watch them scribble notes about root causes. Never mention how quiet it got after the hammer stopped swinging. That part doesn't fit their narratives. Evaluation forms pile up in my file. Always the same checkboxes: lack of empathy, antisocial tendencies, superficial charm. They miss the important data points, like how I've memorized every guard's coffee order, or why I fixed the library cart's wobbly wheel. Small kindnesses build reputations. The staff break room always smells like burnt coffee now because of me. Convince them cheap beans taste better when overcooked. Psychological torture, technically. They still thank me for the tip. Group therapy is comedy hour. Inmates weeping about their feelings, like that changes anything. I participate exactly enough to avoid write-ups. Told them once that dissecting frogs calmed me as a child. The facilitator got excited. Finally, some childhood trauma. Didn't explain that the calm came from precision work, not catharsis. Next session, another convict shared about torturing cats. They gave him extra meds. Missed the lesson entirely. New psych tech arrived last month. Eager kid with a sociology degree. Asked what I'd do differently if given the chance. Told him I'd use heavier trash bags. Less leakage that way. He marked it as lack of insight. Funny how they define insight as agreeing with them. Meanwhile, I could teach this course better than any of them. Seen more case studies from the inside than they'll read in textbooks.
Visiting criminologists ask better questions.
Wanted to know if victim selection followed patterns. Explained how hitchhiker height affected trunk space efficiency. The recorders ran out of tape before I finished the car modification diagrams. One professor actually used my notes in his lecture slides. Sent me a thank you card with a stamp upside down. Probably doesn't know inmates notice those details. The parole board therapist tried a new angle last hearing, asked if I understood the pain I caused. Described cadaver decomposition rates instead. How bacterial activity generates measurable heat in the first 72 hours. Technical accuracy seemed to upset them more than fabricated remorse would have. Denied my release, of course. Made sure to thank them for their time. Politeness costs nothing. Prison chaplain asks about guilt every Sunday. Thinks spirituality might spark something. I quote him forensic autopsy timelines. He sighs and moves to the next cell. Doesn't realize he's part of the routine. Another observer collecting fragmented data. Like everyone else, he records symptoms while ignoring the diagnosis. Latest psychology intern has a nervous tic, rubs her left eyebrow when lying, claims my artwork shows repressed emotions. Those were textbook anatomical sketches, but sure, she'll last maybe 3 more sessions. They always leave once realization hits, that I'm assessing them more thoroughly than they're assessing me. Library duty provides endless entertainment. Watch inmates pore over self-help books, seeking transformation. Meanwhile, I've reorganized the entire Dewey Decimal System. Knowledge is just patterns waiting to be mapped. Human behavior follows predictable sequences once you ignore the noise. Today's therapist wears a wedding ring, but no tan line. Interesting data point. His questions are recycled from some outdated manual. Asks about childhood nightmares. I describe dissecting a cat at age 10, the precise incision points needed to remove organs intact. He jots violent fantasies on his pad. Misses the key detail. It wasn't a fantasy. Reality tends to unsettle them more than imagination. Guards still say I'm the politest convict they've met. Hold doors for them. Remember their kids' birthdays. Never mind that I eviscerated 8 people. Social algorithms outweigh body counts every time. Likability isn't an accident. It's applied mathematics.
The parole board keeps asking if I still have violent urges. Like they'd recognize one if it bit them.
Prison bars don't stop the thoughts, just the practical applications. The fantasies play out cleaner here, more organized, without the mess of actual bodies to dispose of. New psych interns always get assigned to me, bright-eyed things with fresh degrees. They lean forward when I mention childhood, wait for some breakthrough moment. Last one asked what I think about during lockdowns. Told her I plan hypothetical killings down to trash bag brands. She marked lack of progress in my file. Progress toward what? Their fantasy of rehabilitation? Control's the real addiction, not violence. Anyone can swing a hammer. Calculation separates the artists from the amateurs. Guards don't realize how much control I still exercise, which inmates get extra dessert, which guards work overtime. All it takes is planning the right suggestions. Human chess is more satisfying when the pieces don't know they're playing. The young therapists love asking what-if questions. What if mother had been kinder? What if the grandparents lived? Pointless speculation. The only relevant what-if is what if they open my cell tomorrow? The answer never changes. New victims, better methods, cleaner disposal sites. I've had 40 years to refine the process. Recidivism statistics amuse me. They lump all criminals together, burglars, rapists, embezzlers, as if criminality is some uniform trait. My case proves otherwise. Most inmates leave prison no different than they arrived. I left Atascadero better educated than my doctors. Rehabilitation assumes something was broken. My wiring was always correct. Social expectations were flawed. They show us documentaries about serial killers sometimes, part of some therapeutic program. The other inmates cheer for the gory parts. I take notes on investigative techniques. Last week's film claimed killers can't change. Missed the point entirely. Of course we don't change. Why would we? The parole board hearings follow a script. They ask about remorse. I ask about their grandchildren's school districts. Watch them shift uneasily. One member last year actually pulled her sweater tighter when I mentioned knowing her commute route. Fear is control at a distance. Chaplain visits weekly, tries the religious angle, asks if I pray for forgiveness. Better question, do the victims' families pray I get released? That one makes him blink rapidly. He never noticed the Bible's got more violence than my record.
Library time provides useful data. Psychology journals love case studies like mine. They call it antisocial personality disorder, like it's some defect. Survival of the fittest used to mean something. Now it's just another DSM code. The new warden implemented art therapy last month. I drew anatomical diagrams with perfect proportions. The therapist called it avoidance. The medical textbook publisher who saw them offered me a consulting gig. Guess someone appreciated proper technique. Stell guards think they know me. Call me harmless old Ed. Don't notice how I track their shift patterns. Learned 3 guards have daughters at UCSC. Wouldn't take much to get their schedules. Not that I'd need to ask directly. Prison gossip chains work better than any interrogation. The pills they push here don't dull urges, just make thoughts move slower, like wading through syrup. I take them when watched, pocket them when not. Side effects aren't worth the minor sedation. Real control means clear cognition. Stell criminology students visit sometimes, ask about triggers, as if random events cause violence rather than careful planning. Explain that weather affects disposal more than emotions. Their professors never prepared them for that answer. Stell, prison riots are predictable as clockwork. Summer heat, bad food, guard rotations changing. I've prevented 4 just by mentioning certain facts to certain inmates. The administration thinks they've got good morale. Really, it's just applied social engineering. So last psych eval mentioned grandiose delusions, because apparently recognizing one's own competence is pathological now. The same report praised my institutional adjustment. Translation,
I follow rules that suit me. Solitary confinement was supposed to break me. 72 days alone. Know what I learned? Exactly how long it takes ants to skeletonize a cockroach in cell block D. Nature's cleanup crew works efficiently when uninterrupted. Still, the control fantasy isn't about hypothetical killings. It's about knowing with absolute certainty that if those doors opened, I'd walk out and immediately begin perfecting previous work. Not from anger, not from compulsion, simply because it's what I was designed to do. Still, violence wasn't some symptom surfacing. It was always the baseline, the diagnosis. The others, mother, the doctors, the prison shrinks, they're the ones insisting on alternate explanations, as if reality changes because it makes them uncomfortable.
Final hearings next month. Same questions, same answers, same denial. The script never changes because we're all playing our parts perfectly. They'll ask about remorse. I'll ask about their new parking lot cameras. We'll all pretend this is justice. The thoughts keep coming. Cleaner now, more precise. 40 years of refinement without messy field work. If anything, prison made me better at this. All those hours alone, with nothing but perfected fantasies. The ultimate control. Last night's dream featured a highway rest stop, empty at 3 a.m., no security cameras, yet installed. Woke up remembering exactly where to park for optimal lighting. Odd what the mind rehearses on its own. Tomorrow brings another therapy session, another earnest face, waiting for breakthroughs. I'll mention childhood, just to watch the pen move. They'll file another report. Nothing will change. The fantasy remains pristine, behind bars. Meanwhile, the world outside keeps producing perfect victims, trusting, vulnerable, oblivious. All following predictable patterns, all waiting patiently for someone who recognizes their usefulness. Control isn't the fantasy. Freedom is.
People look for monsters under their beds. They check closet doors before sleeping. They avoid dark alleys. But they'll chat comfortably with the smiling DMV clerk or the friendly neighbor who remembers everyone's birthdays. That's why I drove back roads for years with bodies in my trunk, because fear focuses on the wrong targets. The terrifying truth? Real evil wears a familiar face, meets your eyes when speaking, brings donuts to the police station every Thursday afternoon. People picture serial killers as shambling freaks twitching in shadows. Reality's worse. We're the ones who ask about your kids' soccer games while calculating how much trunk space you'd require. They taught you to fear strangers offering candy from vans. Should have warned you about the quiet coworker who remembers your commute route. That hitchhiker you picked up last summer. Was there anything actually dangerous about me? Big friendly Ed with the polite conversation and clean car. The warning signs weren't what you expected. You probably noticed my precise speech patterns and thought articulate. Saw my size and figured gentle giant. Violence doesn't announce itself. It waits, learns, adapts. I spent years studying police procedures before the first kill. Could recite Miranda rights before puberty. That psychologist who pronounced me cured at 21. Did they ever realize their textbooks taught me diagnostic criteria to avoid? Rehabilitation's a joke when the patient is taking notes on the therapist's weaknesses. The system wants you to believe monsters get caught quickly, that statistics protect you. Reality is messier. Most bodies decompose unidentified in woods. Neighborhoods mourn missing girls while their remains feed oak trees 50 miles away. I buried evidence along hiking trails families still picnic on today. Your safety isn't in numbers. It's in never noticing the quiet man tallying vulnerabilities. My gift to you isn't comfort. It's the opposite. That prickle when a friendly voice asks innocent questions. The hesitation before accepting a ride from someone harmless. I've rewired your instincts whether you like it or not. Now when you meet someone unusually helpful, part of you wonders, is this how it starts? Charm is just targeted attention. I mirrored detective speech patterns at the station. Noticed which jokes made nurses linger near my hospital bed. Learned which behaviors made doctors pronounce me low risk. Likability is a weapon sharpened through observation. Those psychology texts gathering dust in your garage, I memorized them to exploit your expectations.
You'll never spot the real threats. They're sitting next to you at bars discussing the latest murders like spectators at a ball game. They're the true crime fans who take too many notes about forensic countermeasures. I should know. Half my fan mail comes from aspiring profilers who think studying monsters makes them immune. Fear the ordinary, the unremarkable, the face that blends into memory before you've left the room. Monsters don't stand out. We disappear into the background better than any shadow. That courteous giant everyone likes at work, he stayed late to reorganize the storage room last week. Nobody questioned why he measured the freezers. Survival isn't about checking locks. It's about recognizing the wrong kind of competence. The mechanic who takes too much interest in your car's trunk dimensions. The nurse memorizing your home address from intake forms. Pattern recognition separates the lucky from the dead. Too bad most victims realize the pattern only after joining it. They'll keep showing mugshots of wild-eyed killers on the news. Makes people feel safer. Lets them think danger looks any particular way. Meanwhile, the real threats pass through metal detectors unnoticed. We're the ones holding doors for guards, filing paperwork neatly, volunteering for behavioral studies. The system's greatest trick was convincing you monsters want to be found. I'm everyone's favorite interview subject now. Researchers line up to analyze me. They leave with notebooks full of conclusions about trauma and psychosis. None grasp the simple truth. I'm what happens when high IQ meets low empathy in a world that rewards conformity. Your society built the perfect predator, then acted shocked when it learned to hunt politely. So go on. Double-check those window latches tonight. Ignore the neighbor who brings your mail when you're out of town. Fear whatever lets you sleep better. Just remember, the deadliest things aren't what go bump in the night. They're what pass quietly in daylight, smiling all the while. Now you'll always wonder about friendly faces, about helping hands that linger too long. That's my real legacy. Not the body count, but the quiet distrust I've sown into everyday interactions. The gift of fear keeps giving long after the giver's locked away. Sweet dreams. So now you know how it all unfolded. The basement, the tests, the careful calculations, none of it changes what happened. You've seen the steps one after another, each one making a kind of terrible sense when you follow them through. But knowing doesn't fix anything. It doesn't bring anyone back. It just leaves you with the weight of it, the quiet understanding of how easily things can go wrong when the right pieces fall into place. So, sleep well if you can. Or don't. That's always been the point, hasn't it?
sweet dreams, or whatever it is you have instead.